Hey everyone, this is Kenny Coins with Marathon Money. Make every second count. With Marcia Dawood. Did I say that correctly?
You
Great.
did.
Great. Actually, I reached out to her on LinkedIn. She actually was kind enough to come on my podcast and do this show. I want to talk about her book, Do Good While Doing Well. Is it came out already? I have it, but when did it come out? To be exact,
September 10th.
yeah. So um, I haven't got a chance to read it. My book came today, 30 minutes ago. So, but I really want to talk about that book. I want to talk about what inspired you to create it, and what is like the future plans for it.
Sure.
But I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Marcia Dawood. I'm an angel investor. In 2012, I was invited to my first angel investing meeting, and my question was, what's angel investing? I had absolutely no idea what it was, but I went to the first meeting and I was absolutely fascinated at the type of innovation that I was seeing, all these amazing entrepreneurs making all kinds of cool things and building companies. And I thought, wow, I really think this is interesting. I'd like to learn more. So over the next 12 years, I did all kinds of things. I helped with angel group leadership. I was a manager of various funds. I invested in lots of different companies in lots of different ways. I went on to be a member of the board of the Angel Capital Association, which is the U.S. Professional Society of Angel Investors. I chaired the board, and now I'm on the Securities and Exchange Commission Advisory Committee for Small Business Capital Formation. And along the way, I just kept seeing that there were all these amazing companies and there were so few people who were surrounding them to fund them. So I'd ask people like, hey, how come you aren't also investing in companies and startups and things like that? And they would say, well, I can't do that. That's just for the rich and well connected. And I'm like, no, actually, there are a lot of ways that people can invest and it doesn't take a lot of money and it doesn't have to take a lot of time. And so over the course of the next several years, I just thought, well, maybe I should be talking about this in a different way. So I started a podcast back in 2021 called The Angel Next Door. I then went on to do a TEDx talk at TEDx Charlotte. And then I wrote this book, which just came out last week.
That sounds like a long and fruitful journey.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many cool entrepreneurs out there, and one of the biggest problems is that women and people of color get so little funding, and the percent that actually goes to them for their companies is just abysmal. The only way we're really going to change that is if we get more people making the investment decisions that look like them. But that means we have to let people know that you can be involved in this. You can have a seat at the table. You don't have to have a special invitation and you don't have to have a bachelor or a finance degree. You don't have to have like all these fancy things. You really just need to be able to know a little bit so that you can get involved and find out about these amazing things that are going on in the world.
So, have you ever got a chance to invest in a few businesses?
Oh, yes, many times. Along the way, as an angel investor, a lot of times you'll see angels invest through an angel group, meaning that, like, back in maybe like 10 years ago, it would be locally that people would get to a group together, like in Charlotte or in Charleston, South Carolina, or wherever they are, New York, San Francisco, whatever it is. But nowadays, because COVID really took so many things online, it is a lot easier to find companies to invest in. It's a lot easier to find groups that you can collaborate with. I always tell people when they're getting started in investing in a private company, it's best to do it with a group because you aren't going to have the expertise to be able to evaluate these companies. I know, like, for example, I do like companies that are working on things in medicine and health, but I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, so I would have a really hard time evaluating those types of companies. But when you're in a group, there's usually somebody in the group who has some level of expertise that can do the background and do the diligence on the types of companies that you're looking at.
Do you feel like this is like your space now? Like, how long did it take you for you to get to this space?
Well, I ended up finding a lot of different ways that you could invest when they were kind of just starting out, investing through a fund, which is where you put in a little bit of money and you get exposure to many companies. That used to be that you had to have a lot of money, like $1 million to do something like that, or at least like $250,000. But nowadays, you can invest in funds for a lot less than that. And so I was learning along the way. And I guess it got to a point where a few years ago, I just thought, well, I learned all these things kind of the hard way because I didn't have a guide. I just thought, well, I'll try this and I'll try that. And I thought, well, if other people are going to do this, they're not going to want to do it the hard way. How can I make it a little bit easier for people? And that's when the idea for the podcast and the book kind of came to fruition.
What is the mindset you want people to have from this book when they finish reading it?
Yeah, so I really wrote it so that it would demystify what it means to invest in an entrepreneur and the things that they're working on. So, I always believed that donating to charity was kind of the way to do good. And it absolutely is. I am a huge fan of donating to charity. I love nonprofits. But to put all of the burden on nonprofits to solve all of the world's problems just isn't really fair. So there are a lot of for-profit companies that are out there working on the changes that we would like to see in the world, everything from healthcare to climate change, different consumer products, all kinds of stuff people are working on. But a lot of people don't know about it and they don't even know that they could be involved in it. So I guess the mindset I'm really looking to change is that to demystify this, to let people know like, hey, this is something that you could do. And in 2016, the Securities and Exchange Commission changed the rules. So now anyone can invest in an early stage company through an equity crowdfunding platform for as little as like $100. And so a lot of people they don't even know that that exists. And B, they never even thought that that would be something possible. So, for example, on my podcast recently, I had the CEO of Republic.com. Now, Republic.com is one of the bigger equity crowdfunding platforms. They have a big percent of the market share. And, he talked on the podcast about how people, can find companies to invest in there, find the things that they're looking for, and still be able to use a small amount of money and not necessarily have to put in thousands and thousands of dollars.
It seems like your journey has been like you went from here, 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 and they're all like simultaneously like line up now. Like just looking over like your LinkedIn and doing like research that I've done, it's like you've been a board of member of like Angel Capital Association, associate producer, podcast host, advisor of Small Business Capital, Mind Shift Capital. Um, like I feel like your experience kind of like all those experience kind of led you to being an angel investor, like slowly but surely. Um,
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Yes.
so what? How do you like? For instance, I'm coming from my standpoint. Like if, somebody like me, like I've been in investing for at least over 13 years. I work for a large investment firm. I actually work for under a PE firm. And also I do marathon money, which is investing stocks and stuff like that. Like, did you see the path before, or you kind of just like, this is the next step?
I didn't really see the path before. Like I said, when I first learned about it, I didn't even know what it was. And so I just kept getting invited to, maybe a meeting here or a meeting there. But that was kind of at the very beginning. And then I ended up moving quite a bit because of my husband's job. So I lived in 5 different cities between 2010 and 2020: Pittsburgh, New York City, Dallas, San Francisco, and now Charlotte. So I got to see a lot of ecosystems and a lot of what was going on in the entrepreneurial space in all of those places. And, New York and San Francisco are really big entrepreneurial hubs, but other places like Pittsburgh and Dallas and Charlotte, you wouldn't necessarily think are. But they actually have a lot going on. There's a lot going on in every city and every town. And I think it's really important that people know about all of the innovation that's happening, and it's happening more and more and more frequently, and it's happening faster, just like we see with technology. So I'm excited for all of the things that are going on and all of the people that can get involved in it. But a lot of times when I would ask people about it and I would say, "Hey, is this something that you'd be interested in or whatever?" They would say, "Well, that's not something I could do, right?" And I'm be like, "Yes, you can, but it's not necessarily that they don't want to. They just don't think it's anything that's accessible to them." So, I'm really trying to say, "Hey, let's start talking about this more. Let's bring more awareness to this so that those entrepreneurs that are doing the things that are really changing the world, the things that we really want to see happen, cures for various diseases or things that are going to help our planet, all of those things are being worked on out there. And a lot of us can be a part of helping them, but we're not talking about it enough." So, this is something that I really believe because I have this experience, I should share it and let people know what I've gone through so that maybe they can get involved and learn from the kind of journey or maybe in some cases mistakes that I made in the past.
With all that being said, one question comes to mind. Do you think it's environment that makes people think like that? It's like school's not teaching it.
Yes and yes. You're right. Schools do not teach a lot about, they certainly don't teach a lot about investing. They barely teach enough about personal finance. I mean, even balancing a checkbook isn't really something that you see very much in school. Although I have heard lately that there has been more curriculum in schools that are based on that. So yes, that's part of the problem. But I also just think we as a society don't talk about it, and we also don't really talk about money very much. And maybe men talk about it a little bit more than women, but as women, we certainly don't talk about it enough. So I think one of the reasons why we haven't, heard more about this in the past or learned more about it is just because it's something that we don't really hear about, and everybody's been kind of left on their own to figure out their own money situation, and then they kind of either learn from their parents or learn from people around them. But if you aren't necessarily exposed or invited, then you may not think it's for you. But I'm trying to say, hey, let's change that, and let's make sure that people realize that it's something that can be for everyone if in fact that's what they want.
Like hearing your story and like listening to you answer some of these questions, I feel like life is like a long journey, long but short. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's long but short. And either a lot of it you're going to do on your own and make a lot of mistakes. And hopefully, along the way, you make some friends that can actually help you cultivate where you want to be. Um, I feel like yours happened kind of that way, where like you move from city to city. You met a few people, got invited to a few things, and now you have a group of angel investors. And like, I feel like a lot of people don't have that nowadays, and it's a lot harder because of social media to really have like that trust, to really know if somebody's giving you the right information. And that's something I try to do at Marathon Money, is try to encourage people to really like get out there and just like, you don't have to kind of be stuck at like a 9 to 5, or like you don't have to just depend on, what I mean, just your regular check. You can actually go about out there and meet people who has knowledge, form a group like you were saying, and find a way to make extra money or to be a part of something bigger than yourself than what they tell you at your own job. Because you are right, there is so many people out there that are doing wonderful and unthinkable things that, like, if you take your time and did the research, you'd be like, I didn't even think this was possible. But there's
That's
somebody out
right.
there trying to do it, and they also need help, and they're part of the same journey. It's just they're making more of an effort than you are,
Mhm.
and maybe your effort is to just be an aid. I
Yes.
feel like that's what I'm kind of getting from your book, like without
Yes.
reading it so far.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Um, I would love to see more people just get interested. And to your point, you don't necessarily have to start out of the gates like investing all kinds of money or doing all kinds of things. You can literally just figure out what's going on in your own local area. Find out if there are entrepreneurial events. Like you could easily just go online and do an online search for startup events in, and then just fill in your city or town. You could start to go to some of those meetings and see what's happening. You might even find startup companies that are very close to you and just get to know them. You don't have to invest money right away. You don't have to take too much time. But if you start to learn about what's going on around you, then you'll start to develop a little bit of a sense of all of the things that are going on, not just in your own backyard, but really all around the country. And I feel like if people start to do that, they'll start to have a better sense of, hey, I could be involved in this. And this is something that I'm interested in. And from there, then they can make decisions like, how would I invest, or do I want to go, join a group, or, how would I do this? And to your other point about, transparency and would you know if people were telling you the right thing? One of the things I really like about equity crowdfunding platforms, and there are debt crowdfunding platforms as well, is that the SEC has made requirements where all of the information about that particular investment is on the site. It's on the platform. So, for example, earlier I used republic.com. If you went onto their platform and you were looking at a company to potentially make an investment in, you would be able to not only see all of the information that the company put up there, but you would also get to see all of the comments, all of the questions that were asked to the CEO, all of the answers that were given by the company. All of those things are on in one place. So that's really what I like about that, because instead of thinking, oh, well, what if this person was told something and this other person, at least here, everything's in right there, and you can get a kind of an assessment, and you learn a lot about what questions other people ask, and the types of answers that the company gives. So I really think that that's a great way for people to kind of get started. Just go and look around. You don't have to get started with a lot of money at the beginning, but get to know what's going on and be informed.
I actually looked at your TED Talk video.
Mm,
How was
mhm.
that, by the way?
Terrifying.
Was it? Was it
Well,
like a lot?
only because, whenever you're doing a talk like that, as well, whenever you're doing a TEDx talk, you don't have the ability to edit. So it's one shot. You get one chance to tape it, to not make mistakes. So I rehearsed it a whole lot, but it did take me a while to write it, and I was glad it did, because I wrote it. And sometimes when you're really close to something or you're telling your own story, there were a lot of people that kind of helped me along the way, and they would say to me, well, wait, that part doesn't, I don't really understand what you meant by that. And so I would start to explain it a little bit clearer. And I felt like by the time the 11 minutes were over and I had the whole speech written out, it was something that was pretty understandable.
Man, I have done speeches before, and when they say, "Oh, you have 5 minutes," eh, when they first tell you, like, "Hey, 5 minutes not that long," but when you go sit down and write something for 5 minutes,
I know, right?
it's long.
It's a
It's a
long
long
it's a long
time.
time. I know. Like, I
It's
was
a
like, "Oh,
really
11
long
minutes,
time.
so fast."
Oh,
Oh my
good.
gosh, no,
But
it was like
11 minutes, I couldn't imagine like sitting down and you have to write something for 11 minutes.
that's so true.
It's
That's
it's
so
a
true.
it's a long time, but it had to be like a terrifying but awesome experience
It
to
was great. It was great.
like have you done any other like speaking engagements?
Yes, many times. Not just here in the US, but also because I was the chair of the Angel Capital Association. I've also spoken in Europe to some of the angel groups over there. And yeah, this book though is more, I'm trying to get the message of what investing in an early stage company is out to a much broader audience. I used to just kind of preach to the choir because I was, always talking to other people who are already angel investors. Now I'm trying to say, hey, world out there, if you are interested in helping entrepreneurs, if you want to help see the changes that you want to see in the world, this is something that could be for you if you're interested. And I'm going to tell you the different ways. So if somebody was like, hey, I really am interested in angel investing, I want to learn about it. There are a lot of books out there, really good books on angel investing, where you could learn about term sheets, how to do diligence, all that kind of stuff. That's not what my book is. My book is about demystifying what it is to begin with. Wait a minute. Like, I would invest in a company. How does that work? Or how would I do that? How much money do I need? Well, wait a minute. How much of my investable assets should I be using? All of those questions are what I'm trying to answer. And then once people are interested, if they want to go get the books that are tell them all about term sheets, and maybe they need something to help them go to sleep at night, because term sheets can be a little bit boring, then they can go read those books. But what I'm trying to do is say, wait a minute, let's back up a minute, because I just don't think enough people know about this asset class.
Earlier you were saying instead of like putting your money towards non-for-profit, people should look at like angel investing and putting their money towards those companies that are actually trying to help the world. Um, that's like a a mind shift. You're asking people to kind of think differently. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and I don't think people should take money that they would have normally put in a nonprofit company and then use that money. Necessarily isn't what I'm saying. I'm basically saying, look, in addition to what you're doing with nonprofit work, think about for profit a little differently. You can be able to make a return. You're not going to make a return when you donate to charity. You donate to charity, you've given the money, and it's with the charity now, right? Well, with for profit investing, you could potentially invest and get a financial return, and you could be doing good by helping a company that's trying to cure a disease or help the planet, or something like that. So this whole concept of doing good in our society a lot of times is, well, if you're going to do good, you donate to charity. If you're going to do well, you're going to invest. And if you're going to invest, you're just going to invest and try to get a return. And it doesn't really matter what your investment is in. And I'm saying you can marry the two, where you can take some of your investable assets, maybe the money that you would put into the stock market or something like that, and you could take that money and you could use it to invest in a small company, a startup, a private company, and be able to potentially also get a return. But at the same time, you're doing something good.
Yeah, I get it. Um, that's a good way to put it, and that's probably a good way people should start thinking about things. I think with everything going on in the world, we're gonna need a lot more people to kind of like step up and make our own changes. That also puts in my mind is like I think a lot of people depend on the government to do it, but sometimes we might have to take it on our own hand
Mm-hmm.
to maybe start pushing and start aiding some of these companies to not only get better but be better and start seeing the changes that we need. And there's people out there that are smart enough, are ambitious enough, and savvy enough to actually make it work, and they just might need gas money.
Yeah. Yep. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So, how did you become you?
Well, I worked in corporate America for a while, back before I became an angel investor, and I worked in sales and marketing and operations. So, what I found is that really anybody, uh, they can bring their skill set, no matter what it is, to help early stage companies. So when I first learned about angel investing, I thought, well, why would a startup company want my help? I'm just I was in sales, I was in operations. Like, what do I have to bring? I'm not a finance person. I'm not this or that, right? But turns out that just about everybody has some type of expertise that could help a startup company. So I've seen many, many people be able to work with a startup and maybe they don't even invest any money, at least maybe not at the beginning. Maybe they just find a company that's working on something they really like and they want to help them by giving them some mentorship or some guidance because it's something that they had done before. And that could be anything from like bookkeeping, sales is a big one because startups always need help with sales, um, advertising, marketing, social media, HR. All of these things are things that these early startup companies need. So I found that, my background really did mean that I could help a startup. But that means that just about everybody's background could be something that could help a startup. So I feel like, I'm not unique. I'm not a unique angel investor who has all this knowledge, who is now going to be able to go and make, gazillions of dollars. That's not how I look at this. I look at it as, I'm trying to take the knowledge that I have because I've done all these various things and I've kind of seen where things work and don't. And how do I help other people just kind of understand, just demystify this space so that now their awareness is heightened and they could be in the future like, hey, I just learned about this company. They're doing something really cool and maybe I could help them and maybe blah, blah, blah. And then the next thing you know, we have more and more and more people who are investing in companies that are making change in the world.
If you don't mind, if it's okay with you, um, what are the top two companies that you're investing now that are like people should know about?
Well, for the most part, when you're investing in a private company, what we call a startup or an early stage company, you're investing in a company that's scalable. Now, when I say scalable, it means they can grow to be a much bigger company because if you are investing while they're a small company, it's relatively risky. I mean, it is a risky asset class. And so we need to we basically need to, first of all, diversify the risk by investing in a lot of companies with little bets instead of one big bet in a big company. But at the same time, you're wanting to invest in those industries that are more scalable. And that's where you see the tech companies. So technology is a big one. Life sciences or healthcare, also a big company or big industry, and then consumer products. So in some cases, some consumer products maybe aren't so scalable, but some of them are, and some then will get bought up by some of the other big consumer product companies out there. So those are probably the three industries that you usually see angel investors gravitate toward.
Do you have you built a portfolio? Do you have like 10, 20 companies in a portfolio now since you done it? I know you said you're investing in small pots.
hmm So I tend to like to invest through a fund, and I've been on the investment committee for several funds. And then when you invest through a fund, you get exposure to sometimes 8, 10, 15 companies at a time, which I really like because you can really diversify a portfolio rather quickly. And, so yes, there's several companies then that are inside of those funds. And I also have made some direct investments in companies, but I tend not to do that so much anymore because um, I like to invest, as a group, either through an angel group or through some type of a fund.
Why don't you invest directly with individual companies anymore? Is there like a reason?
Well, sometimes I do. It just depends on I don't I mean the whole reason I started the podcast, I wrote the book is because I'm not a billionaire like you see on Shark Tank or anything like that. I do not have lots and lots of money.
Mhm.
So I got to a point where I couldn't make any more personal investments. I was tapped out. So I just thought, well, the best way for me to invest if I'm going to invest and when I have a little bit of money to invest, is to invest through a fund, because then I can put this little bit of money out there and get exposure to multiple companies. So in some cases, it makes sense to invest directly into a company for some angel investors. And for some, like for me, in the more recent years, it's made more sense for me to invest through a fund, because I was just trying to take this amount of money that I had to invest and put it to use in the right way. So at the Angel Capital Association, we have a saying that really anybody who's investing shouldn't take more than 5 to 10% of their investable assets to put toward an alternative asset class like angel investing. So that's why, that was kind of my mentality in all of that.
It does open you up to more though when you're in a group. It does open you up to more opportunities,
Yes.
more companies you can put more money towards. So I get it. I get it. One last question. Do you have like an end goal for all this? You got your book, you're investing in multiple private companies. Um, like what do you see in the next like 12 to 24 months?
I would just like to see the awareness built up more so that we have more conversations amongst all of us about what it means to invest in these entrepreneurs who are out there doing amazing things. And I would also love to see more um, underrepresented groups become investors so that then those people will help invest in the underrepresented founding groups. So women, people of color, the disabled, all of those groups of people have incredible ideas, things that they're working on that can change the world, but they are not getting the funding that is needed. And I would love to see those metrics start to change. And I guess if you really get to the heart of why I'm doing what I'm doing, it's so that we start to see things like that move the needle.
Man, that's a really like big goal, big picture. I think that is very much needed. That's kind of like how we started the principle of like marathon money in the beginning. We wanted people to kind of get into the stock market, get investing, start a business, because I feel like the barrier of entry is like really like low now. There's not really
Yes.
much you have to do. There's not a ton of money, a ton of paperwork you have to do, fees you have to pay anymore. Like that's all in the past. The barrier of entry is really low. And I still think a lot of people stuck in the mindset. It's like it's still extremely hard when it's really not.
And I'm so glad you said that, Kenny. That is absolutely correct. So the public markets, it used to be so hard, right? You'd have to have brokerage accounts. You would have to pay terrible fees. There was a market maker, all kinds of crazy stuff happened back in the day. But now you can invest through E-Trade or Robinhood and you don't pay fees and it can be so simple, so easy. And I love that you're doing that. I absolutely love that. My goal is, wow, could we see the private markets be like that one day? Could we actually see it be really easy? Like you could just go onto a platform and just pick a company and invest in it. And it's kind of starting to happen a little bit with equity crowdfunding, but we're going to see the democratization of all kinds of things in the private markets over the next several years. And I think it will become as easy as it is right now with the public markets. But we're a ways from that. We'll see what happens. But you are absolutely right about the public markets.
Yeah, I think it's all a mind thing. I think it's been conditioned like for us to think that way. I think once that train really gets chugging along and gets moving, it's going 100 miles an hour. I think a lot of people is going to be like, you know what? I need to do something. I need to get into something. Um, even just for your future, you
That's right.
know, even if it's just for your future, or for the next generation. Like, as you can see, things are more expensive. Things are harder. People are not staying at jobs for 20, 30 years anymore. And the average
That's right.
worker is only doing 2 to 3 years at a company. So there got to be alternatives. Nobody wants to work 40 years anymore. So there got to
That's
be
right.
alternatives. There got to be other ways we can be a part of the community, be a part of the society, invest in up and coming companies, not just leave it for the ultra rich and the super rich,
That's
um,
right.
or people that just generally get lucky in the beginning. Maybe the Google just happened to be your neighbor,
Right.
like
Right. Right.
that
Right.
kind of lucky. It doesn't have to be like that anymore. I think that's a great thing. Um, just now it's just about research. Just go out
Yeah.
there and find out. And that brings me to, like, I wanted to say this, and I think the reason why I like doing interviews with people like you is just like this is all knowledge that maybe like 5% of the world knows.
That's right.
Very few people know it. Very few people have, like, it's already difficult enough to like find good books and find good books that's actually going to teach you a path or something that you was not really aware of. Um, and I think that's why I really like doing stuff like this. I really like hearing from people like you because it makes a huge difference. Because now I just learned a wealth of stuff that I'm going to go look up. I'm going to go find out. And, you're already telling me you don't need a large sum of money to really get in.
That's right. Yep.
So it's very possible you can. I didn't think about starting a group, maybe get 4 or 5 individuals, start a group. Everybody's going
Absolutely.
to have
Yeah.
different experts in something. So
That's
I
right.
think everybody should really like read your book, get it from Amazon,
Yep.
and just take their time and just after you read it, put a plan together for yourself. It could be
Yep.
another avenue to not just depend on your 401k or your Roth or whatever you're depending on at the end of your life.
100%. Yeah. And I did write a workbook too that goes with the book. So you can find that on Amazon too.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I want to say I appreciate you coming on here. I think this was like a extremely value add podcast.
Right.
Um, but besides that, I just want to say thank you to everybody for watching. If you're listening, go to YouTube. You can watch this. I appreciate you for coming on, and
Thanks for having me.
have a great rest of your week.